A Wrinkle in Time is a bland, boring children's space fantasy adventure movie, full of a couple of exotic planets, colorful, trippy visuals, on-the-nose sentiment, flat performances, underexplained plot points, awkward editing, low stakes, and poorly communicated character arcs. It has some nice things to say about not listening to bullies and embracing the miracle that is you. But don't most kids' movies? It comes off like a $100 million Disney Channel original movie, a below average one. This review will contain spoilers for Acts 1 and 2. A timestamp for my star rating and pros cons chart is in the description. A Wrinkle in Time follows a young girl named Meg, who has a close relationship with her eccentric NASA scientist father, Mr. Murray. Murray is scoffed at in the scientific community for his theories about cross-space travel using only a frequency of the human mind. One day, Murray goes missing. 4 years later, young Meg, her brother Charles Wallace, and her supportive stalker Calvin are abducted by 3 grown women in princess dresses, calling themselves the Warriors of Light. These Warriors 3 wish to help Meg find her father, while tangentially stopping the spread of an all-powerful darkness named Kamazats from consuming the minds of everyone in the universe. Can Meg find her dad and halt the darkness with her light? A Wrinkle in Time starts with a message from the director, Ava D, reminding me that a lot of people worked really hard to bring this movie to the screen and thanking me for paying to see it. I feel good afterwards, though concerned that that was necessary. The Walt Disney Castle logo performs an epilepsy test, flashy thingying me. If they wanted me to forget, they should have put that at the end of the movie. Then, there's a nice scene with Meg and her dad, Mr. Murray, bonding over some simple magnetic experiments, while both being excited to adopt her new baby brother, Charles Wallace. Meg is worried that her dad's love for her will disappear. So Murray pulls out a paper fortune teller he had made in anticipation for the situation. He shows Meg a heart in the center, then closes the paper folds. Meg, forgetting object permanence, we're told she's quite clever though, laments that love is gone. Murray corrects, love is never gone. It's just enfolded. Huh? Okay. The universe may seem like a cold and empty place on the outside, but there's warmth and love within others waiting to be unfolded. Got it. 4 years later, Murray is missing. Startled in the middle of a stormy night, Meg goes down to the kitchen for a snack. Her little brother, Charles Wallace, is already there. The awkward acting between the two, coupled with the unfortunate dialogue, had me worried that I was watching an underage adult film. Meg refers to CW as biscuits, and CW suggestively asks if Meg wants to go back up to his room. Oh man. What should be an innocent sibling bonding scene feels off and otherworldly due to the odd performances and direction. Apparently, the 4-year anniversary of Mr. Murray's disappearance is the talk of the town. The next day at school, a couple of teachers unwittingly stand on the opposite side of a fence from Charles Wallace and proceed to gossip about the Murray family. Charles Wallace? Yeah, he aight. That Meg though, what a worthless cause. Charles Wallace confronts the two, wagging his finger in disapproval, then shouting across the basketball court to Meg that she has great potential. Don't let anyone hold you down. Subsequently, Meg is teased by a young Miss Matthews and hurls a basketball into her nose. Calvin, a handsome young boy, takes note of Meg's rebellious act and commits to stalking her for the remainder of the film. Don't fret, everybody. Young Miss Matthews will have no bruises on her nose in later scenes. Thus, we are now acquainted with the 3 main leads, Meg, Charles Wallace, and Calvin. Some cosmic deities in bedsheets show up claiming that the Tesseract from the Marvel Cinematic Universe is real, and they take the 3 kids to a handful of colorful planets before leaving them to fight the greatest threat to the universe by themselves. A threat that plays fair, holds light conversation, and presents very little challenge to children. Let's break it down, shall we? First, the characters. Meg is categorized by instances of breathy sincerity, mild perplexity, and mean glares. In all seriousness, young Miss Reed does a fine job. Based on the many dull performances around her, I'll assume that Miss Reed's flatter acting moments are the fault of the direction, not her own. According to Meg's school principal, ever since her father vanished, Meg has been filled with anger and attitude, lashing out at others. I couldn't tell if that was supposed to be a hyperbolic joke. Meg seems depressed, isolated, and marginalized. Quite different from the principal's description. Did the filmmakers even read the script? As the movie goes on, that alleged attitude does seep into Ms. Reed's performance, but it was not properly, consistently established early on. Meg's acting switches between either underplayed or completely contradictory to what everyone else says her character is. We're also told that Meg is clever and full of potential, but there aren't many examples to back this up. After Meg hurled that basketball into Veronica, Ms. Matthews' face, the principal accuses Meg of hitting Veronica, and Meg just goes along with it. A clever girl with attitude would have said something like, "I didn't hit her. I was passing the ball. It's not my fault she has slow reflexes." This justified smart aleck approach could have better endeared the audience to Meg's character. Furthermore, the only time Meg has a unique idea, it's also a crazy, nonsensical idea involving a tornado. And Meg refuses a reasonable request to regroup, mistaking a tactical retreat and coming up with a plan for complete abandonment. A Wrinkle in Time is all about Meg learning her worthwhile qualities and growing to love herself, but there are no clear markers of this progression. Perhaps the most emotionally resonant scene in the movie is outside the Seers temple, when Mrs. Witch tells Meg the reason she is having such a hard time teleporting between planets is because Meg doesn't want to return to the physical realm as herself. Meg asks if she can come back as someone else, because she really doesn't like herself at all. This exchange was the most effective in the film for me. Great setup, and nothing follows it up well. Next, Meg's adopted brother, Charles Wallace. For the majority of the film, he's comic relief. The audience is meant to laugh in bewilderment as young Charles Wallace seems to know everything that needs to happen in the plot. Apparently, he and the 3 warrior women of light are well acquainted, and they think he's a genius. Charles Wallace even vouches for his sister Meg, asking that the ladies of light give her a chance and help her find her dad. What? How? When? Why? This element of Charles Wallace's character is never satisfyingly explained. While amusing, this bizarre alien behavior from Charles Wallace is taking away screen time, which could have been portraying his relationship with his sister Meg. A relationship that turns out to be the foundation of the movie. Supposedly, Charles Wallace, the brilliant and optimistic child prodigy of the light, is hiding anger towards a father that abandoned him and a jealousy towards his sister, who got to spend time with said father and is still so obsessed with the dad that she neglects Charles Wallace? Pump the brakes! If Charles Wallace was going to become so important to the second half of this movie, then character groundwork should have been laid in the first half. There is only one scene of Meg and Charles Wallace talking like real siblings before Charles Wallace becomes a detached know-it-all. The brothers' internal conflict needed to be hinted at, and his good, though uneasy, relationship with his sister needed to be properly shown. Have a moment of Charles Wallace and Meg enjoying themselves. Then, Meg brings up their dad, and the camera could rack focus to Charles Wallace's face, looking displeased or frustrated. Without scenes like that, the final third of the movie has no setup or emotional investment. There is an opening scene where both Meg and Charles Wallace respond to their father still being gone, but they both have the same reaction, indicating that they're kinda on the same page internally. Charles Wallace's grief and feelings needed to be properly distinguished from Meg's feelings to justify the last third of the movie. Moving on to Calvin. I'm sure the kid is a fine actor. When it comes to extreme reactions and smiling, he's quite charismatic. But in normal talking scenes, he just isn't sure what to do with himself, and he could have used better coaching from the director. Calvin is meant to be a good-looking popular boy at school that is legitimately awed by Meg's smarts and rebellious attitude. Well, since Meg's attitude and smarts aren't well communicated, and Calvin's performance consists of dull, sleepy eyes, Calvin comes off as an insincere creeper. What should be genuine compliments to Meg's character seem like a stalker buttering up his one-night stand. You have no idea how amazing you are. Really? What warranted that statement? The poor storytelling and acting join forces for unintended vibes. Charles Wallace claims that they brought Calvin along for his diplomatic skills. Huh? Calvin never exhibits any obvious diplomacy before or after CW's line here. For sympathy points, Calvin has a verbally abusive father, but there's no progression to this backstory. Meg and Calvin never have a relevant conversation where Meg is like, at least you still have a dad. And Calvin could be like, I'd rather have a few years' memories with a good father than have to live with mine forever. Then Meg would say stuff about, I'm sure he loves you in his own way, or whatever. Calvin really did need a scene hearing about Meg's father in comparison to his own, which could have been very emotional for him. In A Wrinkle in Time, Calvin is just an empty love interest and cheerleader for Meg's character, with no real impact on the plot. Towards the end of the movie, with regards to his father, Calvin said something to the effect of, he knew what he had to do. Given his blank facial expression, I was worried Calvin was about to go and murder his dad off screen. Meg's mother, Mrs. Murray, was skeptical of her husband's research, which could have added some early conflict for Meg's character, who idolized her father, hearing that not everyone was so enthused with his ideas. This opportunity is dashed. Mrs. Murray serves as an emotional exposition machine and has no effect on the kids. Finally, there are the three Warriors of Light. Mrs. Whatsit, Mrs. Who, and Mrs. Witch. Why are all these women married? Oh no. But seriously, they all have husbands? Mrs. Whatsit, played by Reese Witherspoon, is an impulsive newbie to the cosmic deity business. Eager, energetic, and innocent, she's well cast and charming, bringing a bit of her wide-eyed, legally blonde persona to the role. Her introductory scene in the Murray living room lacks snappy pacing, has unfitting music, and there's an awkwardly framed shot that made it seem like she was about to make out with Mrs. Murray, but I could tell what the filmmakers were going for with her character. Ms. Witherspoon's performance would have been a standout crowd-pleasing delight in a better movie. Mrs. Whatsit is definitely the most memorable of the three ladies of light for me. And she could turn into a giant flying leaf creature, but only during leisurely scenes in a meadow. Not when it could be useful. Wait, did the other ladies have animalities? As well, please, little boys, be sure not to look away like gentlemen as she twirls her clothes off, or you'll miss all the fun. Mrs. Who, played by Mindy Kaling, is always supportive and stiffly acted. She stacks books, quotes other enlightened people since she can't think for herself. No, really, there's a rushed character arc about this. She runs awkwardly in a field and has a single fit of narcolepsy that is irrelevant. Mrs. Witch, played by Oprah Winfrey, is the kind-hearted and wise leader of the trio who is a huge, hulking figure. Early on, she is basically a giant, scary Oprah Winfrey. There she is in the background! A huge CGI Oprah with cosmic powers! We need Megazord power now! Time to can this witch! As mentioned previously, Mrs. Witch has the closest relationship with Meg, guiding her on her journey of self-realization. Though I incorrectly assumed that she and the other ladies of light would be the villains. While Mrs. Whatsit technically meets Meg's mother, it still feels quite creepy when the ladies smile and ask the kids to take their hands to teleport across the universe. Then, the children, besides Meg, nonchalantly, unflinchingly agree to be taken. Was this supposed to be a character flaw for Meg? What's the movie advocating here? This is one of the rare scenes where Meg does seem clever, because in real life, allowing yourself to be abducted is not a smart move. I would hate to think that a kid, after watching this movie, would follow a stranger just because they speak pleasantly and wear a princess dress. Yo, women can be predators too, okay? In Peter Pan, the kids are following someone their own age. In Enchanted, the cynical father is there to keep a watchful eye on this princess, not leaving her alone with his daughter until she's gained his trust. A Wrinkle in Time's three ladies of light are pretty sketchy by comparison in how they just snatch up the kids, and we're supposed to be okay with it. I went with it, but parents may need to clarify to younger children not to do what Meg, CW, and Calvin did here. Michael Pena is wasted. Zach Galifianakis as Happy Medium, the Seer, adds some levity, and he actually had an unexpectedly emotional moment with Meg, lamenting his cave-dwelling, lonely existence. This made me more invested in his character than the three leads, but he's a one-scene-and-done guy. Lastly, the plot. Mrs. Whatsit proclaims that Meg's father was right! Tesseracts are real! Besides the inappropriate laughs from fans of the Avengers, what am I supposed to take away from this? What is a Tesseract in this movie? Mr. Murray claims that he can use it to tap into a mind frequency that'll enable him to teleport, or quote-unquote, tesser, across the universe. So are Tesseracts needed for humans to access that brain ability? They don't appear to be necessary later on, so Tesseracts are an optional handicap solution to Tesser across space-time. What do they look like? Anyway, Mr. Murray tessered away 4 years ago. The three warrior ladies of light tell Meg that they heard a distress call from Mr. Murray that led them to Meg. But wouldn't that mean Mr. Murray was on Earth? You heard a distress call, but you didn't track his location? Oh yes! The movie clarifies that they do know Murray's last location, but stopped by to pick up Meg and friends along the way, roping them into an intergalactic conflict. You're grown warriors, do it yourself. By the time they all get to that planet, Mr. Murray is gone. But they frolic in the fields and have some fun, nonetheless. Well, since Mr. Murray wasn't here, let's go to the Seer, an oracle that can track anyone in the universe. He sounds like a pretty good starting point for a missing persons investigation to me. From him, we find out that Mr. Murray tested into the wrong neighborhood, getting captured by the darkness. Yes, it's another generic light versus darkness conflict. Only this time, the darkness has a name. Camazotz. But the ladies call it the It. The ladies cannot teleport to the It because there is no light there. Except, JK, they can. And It doesn't look particularly dark. I dare not say too much more because very little happens in A Wrinkle in Time's feature-length runtime. I will say that the It is inconsistent and ineffective in its tactics, arbitrarily halting lethal attacks, not poisoning food the kids eat, and standing idly by as the children figure out its schemes. Can the It even be completely destroyed? Or is it purely a case-by-case basis? Does every person have to individually face their own darkness? If so, then there really is no immediate urgency. Despite the movie insisting otherwise, the film is just a big metaphor for becoming a positive, confident person and helping others become the same. Cool, but hopefully not in a cultish warrior of light way. Additionally, A Wrinkle in Time has some choppy editing and sluggish pacing. For example, 1 second, Mrs. Who is fully engaged in a conversation with the kids. The scene cuts to Meg and CW exchanging lines, then straight back to Mrs. Who is zonked out dead asleep with a voiceover explaining she must have been really tired. It is very comedically timed and deadpan. Earlier, Mrs. Murray was telling the kids about her husband's research. After the flashback, the movie cuts to Mrs. Murray sitting at the table. There's no reactions or lines of dialogue, just a weird pause. Then the film awkwardly cuts to another scene. A whole scene of Meg explaining her father's theory and the wrinkle in time concept to the audience using an ant on a string was cut entirely. Also, A Wrinkle in Time is on the nose with its messages. Giant Oprah rebuttals. Is there really such a thing as too big? Well, it depends. You could make it work, but... Oh, wait, she's talking about fat people. Well, even then, obesity is very bad for health and longevity. Yeah, never mind. Another example, Mr. Murray finds out that the frequency of the universe is love. Aww. The musical score is too heavy and doesn't know when to take a hike and be minimalistic, such as in Mrs. What's-It's introduction scene. And the overall tone is dreary and drawn out, full of long sentimental scenes that I didn't care about because of the poorly defined and unrelatable characters. Though, A Wrinkle in Time's heart seems to be in the right place. There's a montage of people Meg knows, revealing that they all have inner darkness and struggles. The film is promoting community positivity and support, nurturing others' talents or good quirks. I found out online that the book had a much stronger message about individuality and nonconformity, an aspect that is lost in adaptation. The movie is sweet and well-meaning, and it may intrigue kids in the subjects of space exploration, or to seek out more cerebral, art house films in the future, but I didn't enjoy it. I give A Wrinkle in Time 2 out of 5 stars. It's a mess, but it didn't make me angry, so it's got that going for it. And her supportive stalker Calvin. Damn it. One day, it has some nice things to say. Named Camazotz from named Kamazats. Can Meg find her dad and halt the darkness with her light? Duh. A Wrinkle in Time starts with a message from the director. Dang it, I didn't look up how to pronounce the director's name. No! Duvernay. D. Oh well, it's probably wrong. Ava D. The Walt Disney logo performs an episode. You're on a roll. Just keep going. Oh, what is this? You have no idea how amazing you are. Oh no. Really? Really? Charles Wallace. Frick me. Oh, my chair did something weird. There are the 3 Warriors of Light. Did the other ladies have animagus eye? She stacks books. It shouldn't be this easy for me to get this loud.